Take a look right here on the right-hand side of your screen. That is video from just moments ago coming in from the Associated Press and Reuters as more airstrikes reported there across Iran's capital city of Tehran. Going to pop this up a little bit bigger so you can see the smoke there in the distance, as today does mark 1 week since the start of the operation. Again, just moments ago, new airstrikes reported in the capital as the U.S. and Israel launched those continuous strikes, with Israel simultaneously striking the Hezbollah terror group over in Beirut. We do have a live image from Beirut in Lebanon at this hour. As you can see, things have kind of calmed down. You're not really seeing anything in the way of smoke, but just about an hour or so ago, there was even more smoke. What I want to pop up now is this post from the Israel Defense Forces that came out a short time ago, as they say, as part of IDF activities in Lebanon, IDF Special Forces operated overnight in an attempt to locate findings related to a missing navigator. No findings related to him were located at the search site, and no IDF injuries were reported. The IDF will continue to operate relentlessly day and night out of a deep commitment to bringing all of Israel's sons, the fallen and the missing, back to Israel. Again, that is the operation that's continuing both in Tehran as well as in Beirut. Now, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, speaking on Fox News Friday, echoed what Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has said about all of this, that the U.S. strikes are about to become even more intense.
The Iranians are fighting on two fronts. They're fighting a losing military battle where they're being overwhelmed. As Secretary Hegseth, the General Kane, and the president have all said, tonight will be our biggest bombing campaign, and will do the most damage to the Iranian missile launchers, the factories that build the missiles, and we are substantially degrading them. Our campaign has been overwhelming.
And again, that was Scott Bessent there speaking Friday, the Treasury Secretary, on Fox News. And this is just some of the video, again, moments ago, coming in from the Associated Press and Reuters as that smoke is rising over Iran's capital of Tehran. New strikes now reported. Amid all of this, a prominent cleric over in Iran, Ayatollah Nasser Shirazi, is urging the country's assembly of experts to act very quickly and name a new supreme leader, as Iran's president shows little control over the IRGC. In a statement this morning, Shirazi wrote, quote, "The timely realization of this important matter will lead to national authority and the best possible organization of affairs," end quote. The buildings, as you may know, associated with that 88 cleric panel tasked with choosing the new leader have been hit by airstrikes, and that's, of course, slowed any kind of gathering of the group. Though Iranian state media indicating, as we've told you several times, that the now former supreme leader's son has been secretly appointed to that position, and there are concerns that he could be the next target by the U.S. and Israel. President Trump also appearing to rule out any further negotiations with Iran, calling for its, quote, unconditional surrender in a post on Truth Social. The president also saying that he wants to be involved in picking Iran's next leader, and White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt speaking with reporters about all of it on Friday.
I won't get ahead of the president on broadcasting any timelines. What I will tell you is what President Trump has already laid out, which is that the achievable objectives of Operation Epic Fury we expect to last about 4 to 6 weeks, and we are well on our way to achieving those objectives. Annihilating Iran's Navy, we know that we've sunk more than 30 Iranian vessels and ships. Their Navy has now been deemed combat ineffective. Taking out the ballistic missile threat that Iran posed to the United States and our troops and bases in the region, we have done a tremendous job. The United States military has done a tremendous job at achieving that objective thus far. Just 6 days in, the retaliatory ballistic missile strikes from Iran are now down 90%.
And that, of course, was Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary. Now, coming up later today, President Trump is set to attend the dignified transfer of the 6 American soldiers who were killed amid Operation Epic Fury. That ritual of sorts there, very significant. It's going to be held over at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. It's going to be emotional as those service members killed in action return home there to be laid to rest. The 6 heroes died in Kuwait when an Iranian drone struck their locations, and those soldiers identified by the Department of War. You can see some of their photos on your screen there. Sergeant First Class Nicola Moore, Major Jeffrey O'Brien, Sergeant Declan Cody, Chief Warrant Officer 3 Robert Marzan, Sergeant First Class Noah Tijan, and Captain Cody Cork. As of now, it appears that dignified transfer will be at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So, of course, no question, we are going to bring all of that to you here on Live Now from Fox in real time. Right now, I do want to talk a little bit more about the latest here on the war itself. I want to bring in a good friend of the show here, Mark Chandler. Of course, he's with Coastal Carolina University and also a former senior defense intelligence official. Thank you so much for taking the time, Mark, to be here with us this morning.
Morning, Josh, and you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And first off, one thing I want to talk about is the remarks that are coming in from that prominent Iranian cleric talking about the Ayatollah there, one of many in Iran, saying that a new supreme leader needs to be chosen immediately. And part of the reason for that is that Iran's president seems to have no control over the IRGC. Just a bit earlier this morning, Iran's president was apologizing to the Gulf Arab states for kind of the rocket fire, the missiles that they've seen so far. But at the same time, the IRGC was firing those missiles. So kind of break down all of that and the significance of it.
Well, I think that's very important that is coming out in public, Josh, when you start to look at how the structure and the leadership in Iran has traditionally been, I mean, since the revolution, the 1979 revolution. The Ayatollah, the supreme leader, speaks for everyone. He is the ultimate control of what takes place in Iran. And obviously, you know, we killed how many last week on the first day of strikes, took him out, and that creates some problems in there. And you covered the fact that we took out part of the Council of Experts where they're trying to go through the process. They have a process where they select a supreme leader from the most loyal, the most religious to come in there. And then it is, after voted on, after being selected, it is unquestioned as the leader. And the IRGC has a special relationship with the supreme leader. The president, while a lot of people in the West kind of equate an Iranian president to a U.S. president or a French president or a prime minister from England, that is not the case. His authority does not extend nationwide. He won't do anything without the supreme leader's approval, and the supreme leader has ultimate authority. So that's what they need. That's why they're trying to go. And you can see from his statement this morning that you covered, and then IRGC launching a missile, that he doesn't have the authority that is needed. Now, will a new supreme leader, and that's the question of really how they go through that selection process. So you need somebody that passes the test, if you will, the leadership test to go in there. A lot of talk in secret about how many son being selected as that. And you know, the question is this public statement by the religious cleric coming out there to kind of take away from the fact that he's been selected, or do they want to announce that so that people can rally around? And when I say people, I'm not talking about the Iranian people. I'm talking about the most loyals. And then finding somebody that can put a hand on the IRGC and direct them. So that's really what they're looking for. But the downside of that for whoever's going to be selected is he's going to the top of the Israeli and the U.S. target list to take them out. That's part of this methodical process to keep confusion going.
And I'm going to pop this up on your screen right here. This is another post coming in a short time ago from the Israel Defense Forces, as they say over 80 IAF, which is the Israel Air Force fighter jets, struck key Iranian regime military infrastructure in Tehran and central Iran. Targets included the IRGC military university there, used for IRGC officer training and assembly compound, ballistic missile storage facilities, underground missile command infrastructure, Launch sites aimed at Israel located in western and central Iran. The strikes degrade the Iranian regime's ability to fire at Israeli civilians. I know I keep asking you about the significance of all of this, but we are now a week into this. We're entering the second week of this war that includes the U.S. and Israel versus Iran. Explain to me kind of the overall importance of the fact that you still have all of these different sites that are being hit time after time after time, day after day.
Josh, that's an excellent question, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about that. You know, if I look at, and we call it in the military BDA, battle damage assessment, you know, between the U.S. and Israel, they've hit over 3,000 targets, killed over 50 senior leaders of military, the Ayatollah, the supreme leader, obviously, you know, but they keep popping up. They keep going through that. The 30 ships that we've sunk or destroyed, along with 13 others that have been damaged, that looks like a lot. That looks like a lot of targets have been hit. But when you start to break this down, you're looking at some of those 3,000 being individual missiles or individual airplanes. And so you need the understanding of that. That IDF strike by the IAF that just took place on IRGC is a prime example. You know, the IRGC has elements throughout the entire country, all the way down from the Persian Gulf, all the way up into northwestern Iran. So when you look at that, you still have thousands of more targets that need to be attacked and destroyed or taken out of commission, if you will, across this entire battle space. 1 week in, you know, in today's society, seems like, okay, it's been a lot. We should have been able to solve this. But you've got to realize that what the military is trying to do now is taking care of really about 40 years of neglect of going after Iran. I mean, they have been able to build up their missile inventory, build up their drone inventory, pretty much unimpeded. No one's really attacked them like this in the decades that they've had to build this. So it's going to take time to destroy it, to knock it down. And like the IAF did, you've got to take out the IRGC. That's the cream of the crop, if you will, for the Iranian military. And when you talked in your first question, that's the ones that are going to operate with some autonomy. So you have to take those out. But then you have to go back and revisit all those missile sites. So there's still a lot more missiles. There's still a lot more of the drones that are out there that are going to have to be taken out. And that's probably where we're looking in the next phase. Along with command and control, we have to destroy their ability to communicate and pass those orders from the highest echelons down to the war fighters, if you will, who are launching it. So I see, you know, 3 to 6 more weeks at least of how this fighting is going to continue at this level, and just urge patience for your audience as you look at this, because this is taking care of 40 years of neglect of going against this enemy across the Middle East.
Popping this up on your screen here, coming in from U.S. Central Command. Again, we are entering the second week, as today does mark 1 week since all of this really began. And they say U.S. forces have struck over 3,000 targets in the first week of Operation Epic Fury, and we are not slowing down. We heard from Scott Bessent just a few minutes ago talking about that. We've heard over the last several days from Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War. So a lot of that information and a lot of remarks and comments here. As we get any kind of updates on the situation in general, we, of course, are going to bring them to you in real time. Now, one question, Mark, that you probably knew I was going to ask you about all relates to Russia, because we've been hearing a lot over the last 24 hours about the fact that reports starting to indicate there from the Associated Press and many media outlets that Russia is actually feeding Iran information. What do we know about that, and what kind of trouble could that cause for Russia overall if the U.S. 100% confirms that?
Well, first off, this isn't a surprise. Russia and Iran have had a long-standing relationship going back a couple of decades, and it's really about countering the United States. You know, Iran wants to counter the United States and Israel across the entire Middle East. Russia wants to counter the United States on a global stage, and has also, for, like I said, about the last 2 decades, been pushing to gain more traction inside the Middle East. And so if you go back to the JCPOA, a lot of folks don't realize that Russia was part of the West process to go in and kind of stop the Iranian nuclear weapons program, even though the JCPOA would not do that and could not have done that. Russia ended up siding more with Iran. Russia has always said they'll take Iran's enriched uranium. So Russia's got this relationship. They've got a military relationship. Let's not forget, Iran is the one that helped build a plant inside Russia for Russia to build those drones that you see attacking all over the Middle East. And so they've got that relationship for the Ukraine battle, along with the missile relationship. So this is just furthering their relationship. But Russia has this intelligence capability that Iran doesn't. So yes, Russia has most likely, and I would like 100% confirmation, but I feel comfortable saying that, with a lot of confidence, that Russia is providing targeting information. Some of the targeting specifics that Iran needs to program for its ballistic missiles or its drones can only come from finite information that the Russians can provide. Maybe the Chinese to a smaller degree. I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like that coming out. So you're looking at this being provided of tracking our ships, which we know Iran wants to hit those if they can. That would be like winning the lottery if they could hit some of our bigger ships. But also, where are our diplomatic facilities? We know Iran has struck those, and you need precise information for that, and all of our bases. So they're helping them without a doubt. You're looking for that. What this means, though, is the United States is going to send some strong back channel communications to Russia, and they're going to tell them that they're going to have to cut this out. I mean, we actually extended an olive branch toward Russia with the cut off of Iranian oil to India to allow India to buy more oil. So, I mean, we can cut that off, and we have to look at how, that entire entanglement will work out. But there's going to be some strong back channel communication going to Russia, but this really, Josh, it just shows Russia's true colors, how they want to keep everything destabilized and how they want to push back against the United States anywhere they can in the world.
And I have to imagine President Trump is not very happy with President Vladimir Putin of Russia at this very moment as all of this is kind of coming in. What I want to do is pop this up on your screen right here. This is actually a live look over Beirut in Lebanon. As we mentioned, Israel has been conducting these simultaneous strikes, not just on Tehran with the U.S., but also on Beirut in Lebanon. And that is because the Lebanese Hezbollah, the Iran-backed terror group, is there. And as we mentioned, we've seen a lot of smoke rising over the past several days here. Right now, just a little bit of smoke there in the distance, but we expect in the coming hours we will see much more of it as these strikes are continuing. And I want to pop this up on your screen once again because we haven't started the voting just yet. You can see that it looks like maybe one person found the site and voted. But the question that we're posing to you at home is, do you support or oppose the U.S. war with Iran? Now, your options here, support or oppose. All you have to do is scan that QR code on the top right-hand side of your screen or go to livenowfox.com/connect and cast your vote. You should be able to go to the Vote Now tab. And again, the question, do you support or oppose the U.S. war with Iran? Right now, there's only one vote in there, which means somebody found the page and voted for it. But we are going to watch in real time as those votes start to come in. Also want to ask you, Mark, a little bit about today's dignified transfer. That is a very emotional ritual, so to speak, that takes place. President Trump, the First Lady, they're going to be there. I'm sure a lot of others, probably Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, a lot of folks in attendance. Can you explain kind of the significance of that overall?
Josh, that is one of the most significant and solemn moments when we bring a fallen warrior, back from overseas, serving our country, serving in harm's way and making the ultimate sacrifice. When they come back, and I think it's great that you're going to broadcast that live, because when you look at that moment and that ceremony of bringing that fallen warrior back to the United States soil, and most of the families, we try to get the families there so that they can participate, and meet their loved ones coming off of those planes. But that is a very solemn moment. It's very telling, and it's very emotional when you start to bring that back and think about, what that sacrifice means, not only for those individuals, but for the families. And you start to see the true impact of the calling that is made by all those people who decide to serve our U.S. military and serve in harm's way. I think it's great that you're going to broadcast it. I think it's absolutely outstanding that the president will be there, and showing his respect. It's just one of the best and I don't mean best in a good sense, but best moments to show that support for our warriors.
And of course, as I mentioned, it is a very emotional service. And of course, that's why they allow media cameras to be there so that folks can watch it at home and everyone can see it. And again, that is slated to start sometime around 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. President Trump is going to be elsewhere before that. He's, of course, announcing this new Shields of America, where Kristi Noem is going to be in charge of that. She's going to be essentially the envoy there. So he's making that announcement sometime around 10 a.m. Eastern time. Then he will travel over to Delaware for that dignified transfer, again, set to take place 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. You can watch it right here on Live Now from Fox. I want to pop this up on your screen as well, because we are, of course, continuing to get all of these different messages that are coming in from U.S. and Israeli forces as this plays out. The Israeli Air Force just posting here, the IDF has identified that a short while ago, missiles were launched from Iran toward the territory of the State of Israel. Defense systems are operating to intercept the threat. In the last few minutes, the Homefront Command has issued a preliminary directive directly to mobile phones in the relevant areas. The public is requested to exercise responsibility and act in accordance with the directives. They save lives. One must enter protected spaces upon receiving the alert and remain in them until a new announcement. Exit from the protected space will be permitted only after receiving an explicit directive. Continue to act in accordance with Homefront Command directives. Again, that is coming in a short time ago here from the Israeli Air Force. And Mark, I want to talk to you about really Iran's military, how it kind of stands here a week into this, because I have to imagine from what we've seen with the barrages, so to speak, of missiles that were fired at Israel that appear to be dying down quite a bit, that Iran's military assets have been severely depleted.
Yeah, Josh, they have been depleted. And here's something, as an intelligence analyst, putting that hat on, I'm not good with using the numbers of 90% degraded and 80% degraded when we start to look at that, because it really, what you have to look at is the volume of the inbound missiles. Right there, you're popping up an attack on Israel right now while we're speaking. So you know that Iran still has that capability to launch those. So what we've done, and what the U.S. and Israel have done methodically, is to try to reduce and roll back the significant threats that we were expecting. And so we did that. We've got the Navy. I think the Navy's pretty much bottled up, but not completely destroyed. I want to, caution everyone to thinking that the Iranian Navy doesn't have some capability still left in the Persian Gulf or near the Straits of Hormuz, but severely degraded to the point where it can't be a major impediment to our naval operations in the area. Then we go after, we've destroyed their air defense capability. So we can fly freedom. Air superiority has been used a lot. That just means we have the freedom over the skies for Israeli and U.S. fighters to fly out there. The ground forces aren't a big concern at this time. So you haven't seen a lot of strikes on ground forces because they're not a significant threat. It's those IRGC forces, it's the command and control, and it's the missiles and UAVs. So what we've seen is trying to destroy the missiles at the launchers. And for a point of reference, we're doing outstanding in that. During Desert Storm, my first combat operation in the Middle East, back when I was a young Marine captain, we never destroyed a Scud launcher. And that was our number one target. So we've come a long way now to be able to take out the launchers that we're seeing and the missiles. So we're rolling back the missiles and trying to roll back the UAVs. But you got to realize these things, when you look at the vast territory of Iran, they're small. They're small targets. So it's hunting and then killing those missiles. So we're rolling those back. The volume has decreased, as I said at the start of trying to answer the question, but they still have the capability. So maybe not hundreds like they did last June and like they did at the start every day, but definitely tens of missile launches a day are going to happen. Give this another week. Give it another 2 weeks before you can see a complete degradation of their missile and UAV forces. Like I said earlier on, Iran has had a long time to stockpile these missiles and hide them in mountains and hide them everywhere they can to launch, and in civilian places. So you're going to see that where we're trying to roll that back. And then the command and control. We have to take away their ability to communicate, even if they do get a new supreme leader. So that's really where we're going to focus and trying to take out those targets that have the ability to hit our bases, our allies, and Israel in the area.
My last question here before I let you go. You and I discussed this really just a couple days ago because reports started to circulate about potential boots on the ground, so to speak, in Iran from the U.S. We've heard President Trump say that he hasn't ruled that out. He's not going into detail about that, of course. But what would that look like if there were, quote unquote, boots on the ground there in Iran?
Great question, Josh. And so to kind of assuage everybody's concerns of what that means, because there's a lot of things that pop into people's head of massive military ground formations. That's not going to happen. We are not going to put thousands of Marines across the beach in Iran. We're not going to drop the 82nd Airborne in and start trying to take locations in Iran. But what we could see are small units, special operations forces going in, dropping in on a target that needs to be secured. You know, earlier in this week, we talked about that enriched uranium that Iran was bragging about, that they still had enough to make 11 bombs. Well, where is that? If we can find that, that would be a boots on the ground target to go in and secure that, because you don't necessarily want to start bombing a bunch of uranium that's out there for the contamination effect. So, you know, that would be something we would seize, or a facility that is controlling shipping traffic or threatening shipping traffic coming in and out of the Straits of Hormuz. There's a few islands. You could put a small Marine unit in on one of those islands. So we're talking small elements, limited objectives, and actually limited time on the ground. They would go in, they would seize something, and they would move out. A raid, a seizures, those are the types of boots on the ground that I could see us utilizing at this stage.
And again, we want to know what you think at home if you're watching us here. The question that we're posing to you, do you support or oppose the U.S. war with Iran? A lot of votes coming in here, so this is going to change in real time on your screen there. All you have to do is scan that QR code, top right-hand side of your screen, or you can go to livenowfox.com/connect, hit the Vote Now tab. Again, this is coming in real time, so it will likely change as you're watching it here and people cast their votes pretty quickly. But as of right now, 85%, an overwhelming majority, saying they support the U.S. war with Iran. About 15% at this point saying they oppose it. Now that, of course, is the same. We've run this here throughout the week. And at the start of all of this, we asked the same question. And I know it kind of ended at about 90% supporting and 10% opposing. It looks like we're headed in that same direction. But if you want your voice heard, scan that QR code, top right-hand side of your screen, or go to livenowfox.com/connect. Mark, as always, we appreciate you taking the time to join the show and helping to break it all down for us. Anything we missed, and I know we covered, as I mentioned, and always say, a lot of ground here, but what do you want to leave folks with as we head out here?
Josh, it is a lot. There is a lot that's happening out there. It's a very complex situation. You know, I'm trying to make it a little bit comprehensible here, but maybe three quick points if I could. One, the shipping going through the Straits of Hormuz. We have to look at that. There's thousands of ships, at least 1,000 ships backed up in there. The U.S. needs its ships right now to defend our ships and to attack. So it's going to be hard to set up a difficult convoy operation in there. That takes more ships than we have in the region to do both offensive and defensive operations. So that's one. And so we can start to work our way through that. A lot of people are talking about regime removal. Air power is not going to do that, but it will set the conditions for that. So we need to set the conditions, and this needs to come from within Iran. And I think once we start to roll back a lot of security forces, that's going to start to make it easier for the people to try to find someone to coalesce around to kind of go against the regime. Right now, it's too dangerous for the people of Iran. And finally, we need to be on alert in the United States. Point out 2 days ago, I believe it was, British MI5 rolled up 4 Iranians who were surveilling different targets for strike, Jewish targets for strike in London. So you have to look at that. 1 was Iranian and 3 were Iranian UK citizen mix. So when you look at that and you start to hear protests, Khomeini protests in the United States, you can realize that there is an undercurrent. So be alert. I'm not trying to be alarmist, but at least be alert to what's going on. Our counterintelligence, counterterrorism forces are on alert, watching in the United States, but we can help them out in that as you go about your daily business. And that's it, Josh, kind of wrapping it up there.
Hey, you know you can talk for as long as you want. You have great info, so we definitely appreciate it. Mark Chandler there, Coastal Carolina University, former senior defense intelligence official. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here, as always. We appreciate it.
You're quite welcome, Josh.